one beautiful day in Mark chapter 4 from verse 35 down, Jesus told his disciples, he told them, let us go over to the other side. And sometimes going over to the other side to most of us is like transition. It's like going over to that thing that you've been looking forward to, that expectation, that thing that you've been anticipating, you've been looking forward to. And you hear him tell you, let us now go over to the other side. And you can imagine the excitement in them as they prepared and obediently followed him. They followed him on the journey that he called them into. And as they were going, there arose a storm. In verse 37, the Bible said that there arose a great storm. The storm was so great that it beat the boat, that the boat was already sinking because it was filled up. And there was the master that called them to come over to the other side. He was in the boat sleeping. And the Bible said that in verse 38, they called him and they said, Master. Some translations said they called him Teacher. Carest thou not that we perish? And I know this is the question that is going on in the heart of a lot of people. You heard God clearly start you on this journey. You heard God clearly, or you prayed about it before you started this investment, before you started on this journey, before you began on this trip, you prayed, yes, or even God called you into a ministry and you started it, and all of a sudden there are storms to the point that it's looking like you're sinking. You don't even know your way anymore. You don't know if you can even make it. You're drowning. In verse 39, the Bible said that Jesus rebuked the storm and there was great calm. So in verse 37, there was great storm. In verse 39, there was great calm. The difference there was that they called him. If they did not call him, he would have still been sleeping calm, because nothing disturbs him. Nothing changes him from who he is. The storm cannot change him. God is God. So they called him. I don't know who he is to you. I don't know what you call him. His name is Jesus. His name is King of Kings. His name is Lord of Lords. His name is Emmanuel, God with us. Called him and present the situation to him like they did. That was the difference. The difference from there was great storm and there was great calm was that they called him, and as they called him, he awoke. The Bible said that he awoke and he rebuked the storm. After rebuking the storm, he now faced them to say, oh, you men of little faith. They had no faith, because if they had faith, that was something they could have even done on their own. So like the father to a child, even when your child makes a mistake, you know that you will not allow that child to die in there because you want to show him that he could have done it by himself. You find out that as a father, you will stretch your hand and you pull your child before you now start correcting him and start guiding him. That was exactly what Jesus did. So he knew that if they had faith, they could have still rebuked the wind like he did, but that was not the time to start blaming anybody. He rebuked the storm. Then he faced them and said that they had little faith. So what again does this tell me? So even if that at that time when they were calling him, they had no faith, but because they called him, the storm became great calm. The great storm became a great calm. Why? Because they called him. Call him today. That is my challenge to you. Don't stay there grumbling like the Israelites were grumbling in the wilderness, because this was this kind of thing that happened that made them tell Moses that you should have allowed us to rather die in Egypt than to bring us to die in this wilderness, because they were following God. God called them out from Egypt into the promised land, and then on their way to the promised land, it was not rosy, and they began to murmur. So this was also Jesus's disciples. Jesus told them, let's go over to the other side, and on their way to the other side, there was great storm. So it's possible for them to have started murmuring, but what did they do? They called him. They called him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? So this, between your great storm and your great calm, is you rising up, whether there is faith there or no faith. Call him, because he will always answer his name. Call him Jesus. Call him King of Kings, Lord of Father. Whatever he means to you, friend, carest thou not that I perish in this? And I believe and strongly know that he will answer you. Have a beautiful week, and see you again on Sunday. Make sure you try this. Stop murmuring. Call him and he will answer you surely.